Welcome to the Network Table Podcast. Here's your host, Luke Van Every.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Network Table Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Van Every. We have a fantastic guest today, good friend, great networker, and a very interesting and valuable service, but don't take it from me. Let's get to know him. Drew, welcome to the table, my friend.
Hey, Luke, thanks for having me, my friend. I'm looking forward to this. Absolutely.
Of course. Appreciate you coming on, but let's start with it. Tell us about Schooley Mitchell.
Well, I have to say, when I decided to buy a franchise, I made the right decision, and it wasn't by luck. I did my homework, looked at 14 different franchises, all different roles and responsibilities, all different, franchise fees, industries. It was just amazing, the journey. After I had put together a 20 list, point must-haves. Like, these are the things I have to have if I'm going to own my own company and put skin in the game and then invest my life, basically. And everything that was on that list, Schooley Mitchell met all 20. And yeah, you know how sometimes if you go to an interview and they tell you all this great stuff before, it sounds great, then you get the job, you go in on day one and you're like, am I in the right place? This is not what I signed up for. They exceeded everything that they have said. So I can't be happier. Basically, I have my LLC, Profit Compassion, and I do business as Schooley Mitchell here in New Jersey. And so I'm me, my franchise, Schooley Mitchell, except we all need a back office. And Schooley Mitchell up in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, has 100 or so full-time people working up there for the franchisees. We have about 200 offices in North America. And everywhere from the content marketing to the sales to the research and development, all the expense analysts are up there, and they are awesome. So I have that back office to really support me. And what we do, sole focus is to save businesses money, Luke. I'm telling you, 85% of businesses are overspending on so many cost categories, the things that you need to have for your day-to-day operations, whether it's telecom, any way you communicate with somebody. If you get paid by credit cards, those processors are really charging you more than they should. So we have a total of 8 cost categories, but the process is the same. We come in, we take a look at your invoices, we contact your current provider, we work with them, they lower your cost, and you see the savings right away. And I love it. I love it. So I get to help these businesses take some of their hard-earned money, put it back into their budget, where it belongs.
Well, in the short period of time that I've known you, I know that you love it.
Mm-hmm.
And who doesn't love saving somebody money? And we're going to come back to the saving money part. I want to go back to the list, the
Okay.
20 company list of different franchises.
Mm-hmm.
Were they, you don't have to go down the list of what they were. That's fine. Were they
Right.
in different industries? Were they restaurants? Were they gyms? Were they, what was your scope of businesses that you were looking at?
It was amazing because I remember getting a call. It was a company called Career Transitions, and I was going to start my own healthcare consulting company. They asked about franchises, and I said, I don't want McDonald's, Burger King, Subway. No, the woman laughed and said, no, there's a plethora of service-based franchises across North America. I didn't know that. So I got hooked up with an affiliate of theirs, Brian Fraser, who's up in Ohio. He's a franchise advisor. And he's the one who tasked me to do my 20 must-haves. And based on those 20 bullet points, he then combed North America for service-based franchises where we would have synergy and be a good fit. He came back with these 14. One was in the education industry, owning a franchise that taught STEM, where it's science, technology, I think it's engineering, mathematics to children. And basically the office we would take it on the road to the schools, and really it was extra education for us. So that was one of them. That intrigued me. There was one it was like I would be a a project manager for a company that would come in and they would talk to the homeowner and say, okay, I'm in your living room. What feel do you want to get out of this living room? And so if they say, oh, totally formal, plastic on the couch, or if they want, oh, flat screen TV, feet up, we want everybody to come in, this company would then kind of like design the room in a way where it would elicit like visceral reactions to exactly what the homeowner would want. It was like very intriguing, but it just wasn't me, you know. So I'm trying to think. I mean, there were some that I could knock off the list right away because it just wouldn't jive with my personality. So I had to narrow it down to 5. So it was Schooley Mitchell was one. You know, it's really funny. The only 2 I actually remember is that STEM one and the living room project manager. The other 2 out of that 5, I have no idea, which lets you know how certain things resonate with certain people, you know?
Oh, 100%. That's okay. So that's awesome. And we're glad that I'm glad that you chose Schooley Mitchell because you are extremely passionate about it and very good at it. And so let's go back. There's 8 items that you said that we look at with companies.
Yeah. What Dennis Schooley is the founder of Schooley Mitchell, and he used to be an accountant. He built it with Mitchell, like $1 million accounting company, and then Mitchell went on his way for bigger and better things or other things or whatever he did. I never got to meet him, but Dennis wanted to do more. So he kind of pulled all his corporate clients, and he knew the finances because he was their accountant.
Right.
He asked them, what stops you from sleeping at night? What are your pain points? What drives you nuts that I might be able to help you with? And majority of them came back with knowing that they were overspending in certain areas, and they knew didn't have the time, the money, the energy, or the background and knowledge to actually do something about it. Light bulb went off in Dennis's head, and then he asked, "So, all right, so which specifically do you think?" And they right away they went to telecommunications. You know, I'm on with these big companies. I can never get a human being. All of a sudden, I get this note that my rates doubled because my promotion ended, and the internet doesn't work. I'm supposed to have 200 megabytes per second, you know, and like I get to freeze and all this stuff. So right away he thought, you know what? Let's start with telecom. He built it up to a full-fledged telecom company. Like we do fee for service for telecom, building your whole phone system and stuff. But we really we pride ourselves on the contingency model, which I'll get to. But he really realized that there are industries in this in business where the vendors have no oversight. There's no audit, where they say this is the cost, and the company owner, business owner is like, oh, okay, that's fine. You know, I'll take it. And so we started out with telecom. The second, and they have
Schooley Mitchell right there. How long ago was this?
1998, I believe we met it, and since then we've built up a 24,000 client database.
Fantastic. And, continue on. I just wanted to get a scope of where we were.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So telecom at the time we were able to spend approximately like 18% on people, and that 18% is a lot, whether you're a big company or a small company. And then Dennis was able to help build a very strong market research department to go out there and comb the world and basically find the next cost category. It happened to be credit card processing. The processing companies, you know that when, like, let's say you're a bagel shop, you sell a bagel, right? Sure. I buy the bagel for 90 cents. I swipe my card. The bagel store doesn't get 90 cents for that bagel. They probably get 83 cents for that bagel, because the 7 cents are going to my credit card company, the merchant's credit card company, the processor, and whoever else is involved, the banks. And so that is the second cost category, and we do very well with those areas. We basically, if an organization generates $20,000 or more per month in credit card processing, that's a great client for us to help, because when we lower those rates, then the volume goes up, the savings go up. And so we were generating right about.
The savings in that started here in 98 and just went like this as
oh my God.
And debit cards
absolutely
the norm. And now I can't remember the last time I went to an ATM.
There you go. Yep, absolutely. I know. So that was good. And then the third one, FedEx and UPS. Those, I mean, good companies, but people would get charged for shipping, billed for shipping, and there was no rhyme or reason. It would just, you get this invoice and it would say shipping. Well, what goes into that? That was the third, small package shipping. So packages 150 pounds or less, as long as you're spending $750 or more per month using these shipping companies or courier services, we can help you. And then the fourth was about a little over 2 years ago, was waste management, waste removal. So the dumpster in the back of your building. You know, the haulers would say, this is what you pay, and you pay it. Regard, you know, do you need a dumpster this big? Do you need 7 pickups a week? You know, basically it was like the platinum level was, oh, we'll give you these 2 dumpsters. We'll collect the garbage 7 days a week, 2 times a day. And you're like throwing 3 tissues away. You know, it's like that doesn't make any sense. So that was the fourth, and that one started generating the highest percentage of savings, probably about 35 to 36%. So right now, at least with those 4 categories, we range between the 18 and 35%. So that's why we're able to say 28, 27, 28%, approaching 30% is our average, you know? And then the fifth one, you still want me to go on?
Oh, yeah.
That's halfway. We're
Keep it
50%
going.
there. I can see the
like
finish
it.
line. So the fifth one was electronic logging devices. Companies with trucks where the government may mandate that they track their mileage. There are these GPS things that track the mileage. Well, that became expensive for any of the logistics companies that has trucks, you know, warehouses, distribution. So we will negotiate down the cost of those electronic logging devices in those vehicles.
And that one's probably still a pretty big one now.
It is. Oh, it's getting bigger. It's getting bigger. The more we have e-commerce with then delivery across the country with the trucks, absolutely.
Yep. Yeah,
And
that's not going anywhere anytime soon.
it is. And then one of my most fun one happened right about 2 months after COVID hit, and that's electronic signature. You know, we are now in a contactless society, right? As they call it, the wet signature is like almost gone now. Right? You can do everything electronically. So electronic signature, the way we got into it was Schooley Mitchell. We knew we needed to have our terms of service, our letters of authorization and whatnot. We needed electronic signatures. So we researched it ourselves for ourselves. And, you know, I mean, you know, I'm not going to name companies, but you know, the gold standard and e-signature, and then there are others that follow. People usually gravitate towards the gold standard, the first one out there. And it's usually the one that's most expensive, but you trust them because they were the first ones, you know? Right. Many times the second and thirds kind of make it even better and they're less expensive, you know? So you got to take that into account. So I remember one of our franchisees, I'm not sure which state she lives in, it may have been out in the West Coast, but one of her clients asked her, do you guys do e-signature? And she said, we don't, but let me ask Dennis. So she called Dennis, asked him, and he said, I don't know why we don't. We just did it for ourselves. So like in a 24-hour period, we launched electronic signature. And that's huge for like law firms who need that, right? Title companies, any company that needs a contract signed or an agreement signed or something all the real estate entities, absolutely. So I love that when that came out. And you know, and Schooley Mitchell prides itself in trying to get 2 cost categories every year recently to try to get up and running.
That's cool. I like that goal. You want to add 2 new cost categories a year to continue on with helping negotiate.
Well, it has to meet the criteria of needed in the industry, both in Canada and the US, and there's a demand and there's no oversight. And so our 8th and 9th ones, 7th and 8th ones came out during COVID. We were supposed to launch 7 and 8 in the first quarter of like 2020. Obviously that didn't happen. But about 3 months ago, we launched utilities and we launched fuel at the same time. People ask like, what do you mean fuel? What do you mean utilities? Well, utilities, if you have an establishment with 4 walls and you need to be able to see, well, that's your electricity, right? Natural gas, water, and sewage. So those would be the four areas in utilities. And who doesn't pay for that? It's either the tenants do or the property owners do. So both entities we can help.
Oh,
We also want,
so you can help both. And so if I am renting office space, but it's broken out that I pay for 1, 2, 3 entity or what are they called?
cost categories.
Now the electricity, gas.
Oh,
and water.
utilities. The
Utilities. That's the
yeah,
word. Wow.
That's right. That's right.
If it breaks out the utilities,
Yeah.
then you can help them as well. So not just.
Right.
Oh, I like that. I
Yeah.
like that.
Well, what I've learned with the utilities and even with the waste management, because you figure, say you're renting office space, right? There's 2 ways of paying for your utilities and your waste and your trash. It's either you pay a vendor directly, or you're paying the property manager, within your lease or rental fee, right?
Right.
So either way we can help. So if I'm going down to like a strip mall and I go to each individual one, some of those businesses, they pay directly if they've been there. A lot of time they're grandfathered in and pay directly, and some pay the manager. So I'll work with the individual businesses if they pay a third party, but I'll go look for and help the property manager if they pay it directly. Because in my heart, I'm thinking that if I can save the property owners money on utilities and waste and water and all that, hopefully they pass that down to the tenants. So then I'm helping kind of both,
Yes, that's what we wish for.
Yeah. And then the 8th and final category was fuel. And so people were like, fuel, what do you mean? Well, anything you need to power something. So vehicles would be gasoline. So let's think of the organizations that have on-site fuel tanks, and they're paying for that. Or think of the companies that have all these vehicles and they give their drivers those fleet gas cards, right? So we will help with that. Think of the warehouse or manufacturing where they're using welding machines. Well, I think it's argon powers welding machines, and you got to pay for that. So we can do that. So any fuel that powers something in business, we can do that too. So you think about that, all those 8 categories, and really they're used by most businesses, a lot, and it's great. And then when we're talking about averaging, close to 30% savings on each cost category per client, think about those areas like the law firms. I have one law firm as a client. It's 28 attorney law firm. They signed on for 6 of our 8 cost categories, then there are some that's just 1 of 8, but that's fine. But it's just, there's so much money out there, and I'd rather see it in the small business pockets than the vendors.
So would I, my friend. So would I.
Yeah.
Is there a specific time of the year when it's the best to take a look at these items?
I would say 365 days a year would be the best to look at it. And yes, all 6. And Sarah, you think about it, and it's really funny because it's ironic. One of my 20 must-haves was I wanted to be with an organization with what service I provided was market resistant. That it didn't matter if the market tanked or was doing great, I would still be able to help, and we would be able to be active. So COVID hits, unbeknownst to any of us. Did it impact the business? Of course it did. In the end, people still going to want to save money because they're not getting the revenue in that they did, right? So that's one example. Another example, I always say that if you're doing really, really well generating revenue, that's the best time to cut costs, right? Because what's the formula for profit, right? Revenue, expenses, right? So we can help lower those expenses, which increases your profit. So that's really the way. It's real life discussions. It's not, it's not anything, no magic,
I get it. Your passion is still, it's oozing out. The more you talk about it, I love it. But Drew, how long have you been with Schooley Mitchell? How long have you been doing this?
Bought the franchise in April of 2019, launched in May of 19. So it's only been a little over 2 years, but it feels like I've been doing it for years in a good way.
Well, I love that. So you've been doing it for 2 years. So how did we get here? What did we do before this? What led up
Isn't there is there a Beatles song called Long and Winding Road? I think there is, a Long and Winding Road. I think that's maybe a McCartney song. Anyway, I didn't wake up in the morning when I was like 2 years old and know what I wanted to do. So I graduated college with a bachelor's in psychology. And it was funny. My dad always said, well, you do something where you can make money. I said, Dad, I want to help people. He said, you can help people and make money at the same time. And he's right. But I went into psychology because I love human behavior and I love to understand what makes people tick, so I can determine what they need and I can help them. I'm like an empath at heart, almost to a fault. But after graduating college, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went to Fairfield University in Fairfield, Connecticut. And in the psychology department, they had a program where a 2-year program, it'd be a full-time job, and it would be working for the psychology lab supervisor, as the psychology laboratory supervisor for the psychology department. So I got to be student teach. I got to do research. I took care of the lab with all the animals, the rats that we did the lab research on. I ended up getting published for it was a poster presentation on the effects of divorce on adolescents from, and with one of the social psychology teachers. And then I got published in an abstract for cognitive psychology, the effects of like lesions on the brain, and then what positive effects a certain medication would have on lesions. And so I got published in those two things and never thought I would. And I thought that was really cool. And I love healthcare. Really cool. I love the science. I love the science behind everything. So picture, human behavior and science. One of my favorite teachers, Dr. Mark Warden at Fairfield, he's since passed away, and I miss the heck out of that guy. I remember having lunch with him, and he said to me, Drew, you've been here about, 6, 7, 8 months. What do you want to do with your life? I'm like, I really don't know. He goes, what do you like? What do you have a passion for? So I talked about the human behavior, and then I talked about healthcare. He said, have you ever thought about healthcare administration? And I said, healthcare what? Well, I was thinking 4 walls of a hospital, it's doctors and nurses. What did I know about environmental services doing the cleaning and home care and so
much more to it.
Oh, I knew none of that stuff. I'm like, really? So he said, I want you to do some research on it, understand the ins and outs and operations of a hospital. Let me know if you're interested, and I can contact some of the executives in the near hospitals here in Connecticut. So I decided to go for it, and I sent letters to the actually, I bypassed everybody. I sent them right to the president. I did my research, and at that time, there was no Google or internet. So I'm in the library at Fairfield going through these books and trying to find out who the presidents are for each of these hospitals. It was nuts. I did get responses from quite a few, and since I lived in New Jersey, I decided after my 2 years, I would go back to Jersey. What happened during that time is Fairfield paid for my master's degree in applied psychology. Nice. So I left there with a bachelor's and a master's and 2 publications to go into healthcare. And I accepted a position at Hackensack University Medical Center in Hackensack, New Jersey back in '93. And I was in procurement, purchasing. And I ended up being the buyer who bought the capital equipment for the hospital. Anywhere from the small syringes to big MRIs and everything in between. So I learned negotiating skills. I learned the value of money. I learned that if I don't do research and learn about the product, a sales rep can kind of the sales rep can kind of tell me things. And if I don't know, I like, oh, okay.
When you're the buyer, were you doing inventory back at that time as well?
Yeah, we did. We did inventory. I actually, because I was in purchasing, I got to know the people in distribution and the warehouse and receiving, and I learned the whole first in, first out. And I really kind of ended up an expert in inventory control. And there's a lot of money wasted anywhere, and in hospitals too. So you got to keep an eye on that. So there's the cost thing that started getting into my head then. So when I was at Hackensack, that's what I was doing. I was working also on the service agreements for the equipment and determining should we lease, should we rent, should we buy, and if we do buy, do we buy that extended warranty that now I tell people no? Do we buy the insurance on things? I tell people now no. So I learned that it was amazing because I would challenge the sales reps. I say, listen, I'm never going to know as much as you do because it's your life right now. I need you to teach me the basics.
Right.
And the more you're willing to teach me the basics, the more I'm willing to do work with you. That wasn't just about the cost savings. It was about be free to educate me.
You wanted the
You know?
value.
I wanted the value. And once I understood the value, and then they talked up here to me, at least I could understand where they were coming from. And I could question, well, you told me this, how come that? So that's what really got me started. And midway through my career at Hackensack, I got a call from the director of the operating room. And she said, Drew, how would you like to be the first non-nurse to be the support services manager in the operating room? And to me at that time, it was cutting edge and I didn't realize it, because usually operating rooms would just promote the best technician or whatever to do the purchasing. But
Right.
I guess Terry, that was her, Terry, she probably saw the value in that and brought me over. So I traded in the suit for scrubs. And so I was wearing scrubs. I was in the OR. I ended up being a manager there at age like 27 or 28 for 50 people. And it's a 24/7 job. So, I had the environmental service technicians, the people who really sanitize the OR between cases, had them reporting to me. So I had to learn. And the best way for me to learn how to do it is I made sure I got trained by a licensed company. And I went in with the mops, with the environmental people, and I'm cleaning up this stuff in between heart cases and orthopedics to try to learn what it's like to just be in the shoes of these awesome people, these frontline people who don't get the recognition, And I never forgot all the people who really do the hard work. Never forgot it when I climbed up the ladder in the hospital industry. And so I got really an appreciation for what they do. And so I would never compromise anything that would affect their job, and as I moved on. So I ended up after at Hackensack, I was kind of, granted, I got burned out. I was close to 30 years old and I'm like 24/7. I got burned out. I'm like, let me see if the grass is greener. So I figured in my head, I had already worked in higher education. So I see life business as a quadrant. You have so higher education's nonprofit. So I was with the university, I was nonprofit, non-healthcare. So you'll follow me on this, nonprofit, non-healthcare. Then I went to a hospital. So that's nonprofit healthcare, okay? I decided when I got burned out, I'm like, let me try corporate America. I ended up working for Merck Pharmaceuticals for a year. So now you got the for-profit healthcare sector. And what was good at the time is when I was at Hackensack, they paid for my MBA in healthcare administration. I went to Baruch College, City University of New York, and I got my MBA in healthcare administration. And
this is while you were doing all.
This is while I was doing the Hackensack stuff for 6 years. It was mostly the 3 years I was in towards the end of my purchasing career and went into OR. So every Tuesday and Thursday, I would leave Hackensack and drive to Hoboken, take the PATH train to Manhattan. And the classes would be like from 6 to 9 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then I drive back.
No sleep, right?
No, sleep was overrated when you're 20 some odd years old. Now I need all the naps I can get. It's like, so that was great. And I went to Merck with high hopes of going into management. But at the time, Merck had a rule where you had to be, I believe, it was a sales rep for like 2 years before you can be considered for internal management. And I said, fine, I can suck it up for 2 years. And what happened when I was in training for a year, they changed the rules to it was like 4 years or something. And they didn't grandfather that poor group in training that just left their 6-figure jobs, So after a year, I decided it wasn't for me. I felt like
a year long of training. After a year,
it was like 8 weeks of training, and then you'd go in the field.
Right.
And in the field, and in my head, I'm thinking, I can book an appointment with the doctor, and I can. Well, yeah, right. It ended up being cold calling, which scared the what out of me. And I remember I was assigned to Passaic County in Jersey. And one of the areas was Patterson, which I didn't know much about, and a lot of one-way streets. And at that time, there was no GPS. So I'm with that big map and I can't read a map. And I'm like, I had to phone a friend. I'm like, thankfully we had flip phones at that time. And I was like, I couldn't find, I ended up going to see 2 doctors in an 8-hour day because I kept getting lost.
You might have had a flip phone, but it cost you $2 a minute at that point.
I know, exactly. And so, I love the science and learning about it and training, because half the training was learning about how the Merck, because I did cardiovascular drugs, how the drug metabolizes in the body. So I got my science of learning what the mechanism is that allows the medication to work in the body, and what organs. And I mean, I would learn, like, if you were taking high cholesterol medication, right? You should take it at night because the liver metabolizes at night while you're sleeping, and the cardiovascular drug goes through the liver. I love that stuff, man. I love it, and because that stuff matters. So, but after a year, it really wasn't for me. I ended up, I figured I finished 3/4 of that quadrant I was telling you about.
Right.
So what do I have left? I had for-profit, non-healthcare.
You had nonprofit, non-healthcare, for-profit healthcare,
non-for-profit healthcare.
Non-for-profit healthcare.
I needed
now you got for-profit, non-healthcare.
I figured, why not? I ended up being recruited to be the operations coordinator for a startup broadband wireless company. And you're talking 1999, when Bluetooth was gonna be in diapers soon. So I remember the company is called Ceragon Networks. You'll see them publicly traded on NASDAQ now. But when I started, I was the 13th person hired. And so I was hired for this. I was the operations coordinator. So at the time, we didn't fill the warehouse position yet. So I'm running the warehouse. There's your inventory control, right?
Yep.
But it's not medical supplies. It's now these big satellite dishes, the boxes, because it was all about broadband wireless. It was new, So I'm getting this stuff in, reading up on it, learning. Then I'm working with the salespeople. When they would book a sale, I'd order the stuff. It was headquartered in Israel, a company, and the U.S. headquarters was in Mahwah, New Jersey. That was the startup. So I did that. I did the shipping. So I learned that I can bill shipping in certain ways, because you're supposed to do it on the weight of the package, the size of the package, and the distance it's going.
Right.
Except I was given the leeway to mark up whatever, I could, because there was no algorithm, and what bothered me, which happens in any industry, is I would just put shipping and mark up, and it would, because I know what I'm paying from have it coming in, and I would mark it up. And, when you're selling millions of dollars worth of hardware, that shipping line item kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So if you're paying $400,000 for all these satellites and the shipping is $3,000, and so I was also responsible for accounts receivable. So I got to learn the operations of that industry. Then the market.
I want to pause on accounts receivable for a second. In 1990, with picking up the phone. Hey, I need you to mail me a check.
Yeah, there's basically mail a check. And I had a good relationship. It's all relationship building. I had a good relationship with our clients, our customers. And it was great because I learned really corporate America. The interesting thing is that market got saturated so fast. There were too many suppliers and not enough demand in something new. But one funny story before I tell you what ended up happening to me there is, I remember the first sales meeting. We were on like this boat and going to the New York City. It was a sales meeting for the team. But I remember that, and I remember docking and going to a company, and I remember walking with the president of Ceragon Networks, and all of a sudden he starts talking to himself, and I'm thinking he's asking questions. So I answer him. He goes like this to me, and I'm like, what's he talking to himself? And he says bye. And he says, oh, I'm sorry, I'm testing out something new. And he takes this thing out of his ear. It was like the wireless earbud thingy, whatever.
Bluetooth.
yeah, Bluetooth. And I'm like, what is that? He goes, it's something they call Bluetooth. He started explaining to me about the frequency and blah, blah, blah. I had no idea what he was talking about. Little did I know, I was right in the beginning of the cutting edge of something pretty cool, you know? Since the market saturated, we're probably up to about 30 or 40 employees, and we went public. So I was getting stock options, all that stuff. They had to start layoffs. And I remember there were 2 rounds of layoffs. I survived the first round, but I was let go the second. And when I got laid off, I was married at the time, and my wife was pregnant with our first kid, and we owned a home. So first time I was ever without a job, you know. So unemployment, she's on disability because she's pregnant. I'm like, I decided to go back to healthcare, what I knew, you know.
Right.
So I got a position that I was told at the time that I was overqualified for. And I said, listen, I swallow my ego. I've got no pride. I'll start from the ground up and work my way up. Here's my situation. So I got a job at the Valley Hospital in Ridgewood, New Jersey. That was back in 2002, the year my first child was born. And I was in the OR doing the materials management supervisor in the new same-day surgery center. And same-day surgeries were starting to be kind of new back in 2002. So that was kind of cutting edge. And I was back to my inventory control of the medical stuff. But I was I was a manager. So it was a bigger, opportunity. And I did that. Here, the best part, which is close to where I'm getting at now, is halfway into it was a 10-year career there. After 5 years, I learned that there was a position open in strategic planning and business development. And I was like, you know what? That would be cool, because I'd be doing feasibility studies. We want to start a new program. Is there a need? Where are we going to get the revenue from? How are we going to market this? Are we going to be viable, and how long will it take to be viable, and all that kind of stuff. So
this was brand new. This was something
brand new.
Hospital had never done before. It was
no, but I figured I had gotten my MBA in healthcare administration, so I learned about that. I learned a lot about the operational parts of a hospital when I was at Hackensack.
obviously.
I had done the negotiations. I learned about revenue and downstream revenue and direct and Medicare and all that. So my first feasibility study was, should we develop a women's heart health program? And I did the study, and we couldn't find any direct revenue. So I teamed up with the director of managed care. I said, how can we show some downstream revenue? Because we did cost-free risk analysis. So we weren't charging for the risk analysis. And instead of saying, oh, here's revenue, let's start to charge people for the risk. We wanted to keep that for free. The thought was, when you're getting a test to see what your risks are, there is a certain percentage of patients, unfortunately, will find something that we need to fix.
Right.
And if it's something to do with the heart, it could mean they need a stent or they need something, right? So in talking to the managed care, we were able to match up medical record numbers of the people who went to had the risk assessment and ones who ended up having to have procedures through Medicare, and link them up. And it was determined that, there was the downstream revenue. We're helping all these people. Unfortunately, a certain percentage, we have to do something. So once you do one procedure would bring in, revenue that could fund the program.
And you were helping the people before it was too late.
Absolutely. And we weren't taking away the free risk assessment, because we had a duty to keep that complimentary, So that was wonderful. And then what happened in, I think it was 2000. Am I boring you yet?
No,
This is a long and winding road. This is what I told you. This is, I don't know how I got to be sitting here with the Luke Van Everett. Okay. Anyway, miracles do happen. So it was, I think it was 2012, and my boss at Valley, she got promoted to corporate director of patient experience at New York Presbyterian Hospital in Manhattan, and I ended up accepting a position there as the patient experience, or what they called the patient satisfaction specialist, or whatever they called it at the time. that New York Presbyterian owned 5 hospitals at that time. So there was a one patient satisfaction. What the heck did we call ourselves? Anyway, one of us in each of the 5 places. So I got to go to Weill Cornell Medical Center in the Upper East Side. And I was the
So you're still
patient.
living in New Jersey at the time.
I was commute, and I
Okay.
continued to. I just did the new commute to the Upper East Side was tough, man. There was no like direct, whatever. So, but I did there for 3.5 years, was doing patient experience at Weill Cornell Medical Center. What an amazing place. I mean, when they say amazing things are happening there, they really are. And I was actually there when they were doing New York Med. Remember on I forget what channel it was on, ABC maybe. New York Med was filmed within Weill Cornell Medical Center. It was about.
That was before my.
It was
New
like
York time.
it was like the beginning of the reality shows kind of thing. It was like a reality show. Anyway, that was pretty cool. So I loved working there, man. You talk about state of the art science and what I learned there. And then we bought out New York downtown, which was where the trade centers are.
Yep.
It's now New York Lower Manhattan Hospital. So I worked there for two and a half years doing the same thing there. What I did neglect to say, and why there's a tie to me working in Lower Manhattan, was when I was let go by that broadband wireless company.
Right.
It was August of 2001, a month before September 11th. And I remember being at an interview and I was even in an accounting firm applying for a job. I was in an interview. Yeah, I know. On that Tuesday morning, I tell you, I don't know what I want to do. And unfortunately, I was there when that happened. So fast forward years later, so I said 2012. So probably at 2015. So 14 years after September 11th, 2001, I am ending up working in the hospital that was right by the trade centers, that was in the heart of all, and talking to the caregivers who were there at the time, and what it was like, being there with all the soot and people coming and banging on the doors. I got goosebumps, man. It was, and those, you talk about heroes.
Yep.
The people I met at Lower Manhattan Hospital for New York Presbyterian,
Sure.
those were heroes, man.
Sure.
Holy geez, like you wouldn't believe. So, after my 5 years at New York Presbyterian, I ended up getting a job as the director of patient experience and patient relations at Nyack Hospital, which is now in Nyack, New York, which is now, it's now Montefiore Nyack Hospital. So I did that for a year and a half, and I turned 50, and I finally said, okay, career transition time. And I wanted to start my own healthcare consulting company. Career transition time. So there was healthcare consulting. So I registered my LLC, Profit Compassion, like the play on words there, Luke.
I
Profit
do,
Compassion.
very much
Like
so.
that. Yep. And I was going to start from ground up, or find a colleague who was in it and maybe work for them for a couple of years and learn the trade and then start my own. When I got the call from that company, Career Transitions and Franchises, and that's how I ended up where I am.
Oh, Drew, this is why that story, your journey is exactly why I started the Network Table podcast.
Really?
That was awesome. Like,
nobody people tell me, but Luke, people tell me I talk too much, man.
No,
you know what my mother says to me when I'm telling a story? She tells me to land the plane, like get to the point. I'm like, you can't like tell a joke by just telling the punchline before you get.
This was your time to tell that story, and I'm glad you did.
Yep.
Because you can look at your LinkedIn and you can look at your pictures on whatever. You don't get what you just told.
No.
Out of that. You just did the connectivity to it, the thought process behind it, how it all winded and ended up back together.
Yeah.
And now why you're doing what you're doing.
Yep. And I'll tell you, people will say, I wish I'd changed this. You know what? I do not want to change 1 second of my past, because I'm a firm believer that if you change one thing in your past, you don't end up here. Right? I firmly believe that. If I had taken a left instead of a right back in 2010, I wouldn't be sitting here with D. Luke Van Every. So, you got to embrace your past. You got to learn from it, and you got to move on and for bigger and better things, and that's it. It's just the way life is.
It's incredible. Life is incredible.
Thanks, man.
And that story is incredible. So we can sit and we can debate all of the bad in 2020. You know, that's easy.
Mm-hmm.
What was one good thing that you took from 2020?
Well, you know, I've gone through a lot in the last 6 years, the divorce and the death of my father, loss of a couple jobs, new business, things happening with my kids, you know, emotionally, resiliency, Luke. And the challenge, you know, when COVID hit, I didn't blink an eye because I had, you know, I was like, all right, bring it on, you know, because I believe that God doesn't give you more than you can handle. So I was like, I don't know why you're doing this to me, but come on, just bring it. And so when COVID hit, I did suffer from, oh, woe is me syndrome for probably about 5 months. I have to admit that. But what I finally turned to non-toxic people, and I turned to those people in my life who were always positive. And I would say, you know, I don't know what to do. And, you know, new business, this, blah, blah. And I talked to people and they said, Drew, there are businesses out there that are thriving during COVID. And it's not the companies you would think, because it'd be companies in one industry and then they were shut down for that, but then they'd start making PPE. They could have been a sheetrock company going to make, you know, personal protective equipment for, you know, that kind of thinking was thrown at me. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, absolutely. So I started thinking about, let me start interviewing, you know, my colleagues, my referral sources, and interview them and promote their businesses to help them out. Because if they're struggling, I want to make sure they're around when we're finally opening up stuff. I started networking like you wouldn't believe. I met you. I wouldn't have met you. I remember it was October of 2020 when I finally went on my first like virtual network thing with the Brady Bunch times 30 on Zoom with like 50 people. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. But I'll tell you, I tried to go to any networking thing virtually as I possibly could. I'm meeting people in different worlds, you know, worlds, not worlds, because that would be like Mars, but I'm talking about other countries. And it was great. And then I went to enough that I knew the type of people I wanted to gravitate towards, and I knew the type of format I wanted. So I was looking for that. And so when I went to yours, the In This Together, you guys had the format that was close to what I was looking for. Your new format's definitely what I was looking for. So I encourage everybody to go look at his new format. Tuesdays at 11, he'll give you the information. But the people in your networking group are phenomenal. They're the kind of people I want to gravitate towards. So I narrowed my search down to business lead generation groups and networking groups of people like-minded, like myself, honest, integrity, work ethic, and they get it, you know, people who can get it. And that's what the silver lining for me was. It forced me outside of my comfort zone and take some risks for me, you know, and I'll tell you, I'm a stronger person for it. So I guess that would be like I always do, the long answer to a short question. I land the plane.
Drew.
Plane's landed.
This has been fantastic. Drew, you're an incredible human being. Your story is incredible as well. And thank you for sharing it with us and allowing us to be a part of it.
You're welcome.
If we want to get a hold of you and we want to learn more and we want to see how you can save our business money, how do we do so?
Well, the website you can look at to start to get an idea is www.schooley, SCHOOLEY, Mitchell, MITCHELL.com, and then do a / and do D Deraney, because that'll come to my splash page. And secondly, you can email me at drew.deraney@schooleymitchell.com, or you can call my cell phone at 201-739-2464. or my landline at 201-857-3589, or come to In This Together Roundtable at 11 o'clock on Tuesdays. You can find me there.
I love it. Drew, big fan. Thank you again. And
Thank you.
I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Appreciate it, Luke. It's really good spending time with you. Thanks.
Thanks, buddy.
All right.
For more information, please visit truecomparepeo.com.